Thanks for joining us for this special edition of Take Two. We are getting closer and closer to the November election. Ballots will drop tomorrow. Today is October 14th. I'm joined with Congressman Burgess Owens. Thanks so much for being with us.
Looking forward to it, Heidi, for sure.
It looks like you're moving around, doing a lot. I saw there was a call last night, which was a Trump phone call that was LDS voters trying to get some backing. Senator Mike Lee was on that call. You were on that call. Tell me why there's such a focus on religion and politics this year.
Well, you know, we're at a point where everything is very close. So the key is, how can we get our message out to let people know just how important this election is? And I'm excited about being part of that, to be honest with you. I think, Heidi, we've never been in a position where we have the decision of which direction we want to go into. I'm glad I had a chance to spend the time yesterday, because a lot of this is our spiritual battle. It's how can we make sure keep a country that believes in freedom, that makes sure we keep a focus on our legacy, which are our kids, and that's something we have to fight for. It's just the American way, but we shouldn't take it for granted. So that's kind of one of the areas where we're going at right now, for sure.
I've noticed you've spent a lot of time campaigning for other candidates in other states. Where else have you been, and where are you putting your work in? Because people here in Utah like to see you in the district and what you're doing, but obviously there's a lot going on with campaigns right now.
Well, first of all, I'm blessed. Blessed to represent the 4th District. It represents the values I grew up with. So it's nice to know that I can really just be myself, and folks here appreciate what I'm representing them for. The other thing is we have a remarkable team. So we're literally still all over the district. The upside is that because I didn't have a primary, I'm literally across the country. I've probably spent time with about 18, 19 of my colleagues that just came back from California just this morning, was in Reno, Nevada before that. So I'm able to go out and just help to build our majority. That's going to be very big for us. And I call it the trifecta. We need to have a majority that is not so much in chaos. We need to have the House and President Trump. That America First process will give us something we've never seen before. Not only America First in D.C., but we have the American people more engaged than ever before. We really do want to make sure we understand the process and being part of it. So I'm excited about the opportunity we have to go into the new year with some really good opportunities, for sure.
Let's talk a little bit about that process. I think there's a lot of talk about the economy right now, also our southern border. Have you been down to the southern border of late?
I went, when I first came in, I went again last year. And it was interesting because when I went back in 2021, it was very obvious that if we did not do something, it was not going to be sustainable, that we're going to end up being impacted. What's happened since that point, it's not just the border now. You don't have to go down to the border to see the issues and the misery. Any place across the country. We're dealing with it right here in Utah. The fact that our school systems are now being overwhelmed. We have teachers and administrators. When you have kids coming in, we have to teach, but they don't speak the language. Then the question is, simple questions like, do we go with pass fail, which is not helpful for the kids that we're teaching here. So whether that or the other resources we're trying to deal with to make sure that we keep our budget, keep our things going on, everything has been impacted now with the border. We saw that again 2 or 3 years ago. We're now seeing across the country. So that's why it's a big issue. I'm thankful for that. Americans need to realize that we have to have a government that keeps us safe. And right now, that's not the case.
What are you hearing from your district about that? Because we obviously see the issues that are going along on the border. Some of our communities, like Harriman, really have a large percentage of migrant families that are being assimilated into the community, into the schools. Are you hearing anything specifically where there are issues saying, hey, we need help in this regard, or are things going smoothly?
Well, you mentioned a word that's so important, it's assimilation. You see, the way we've always dealt with this country as a melting pot is we've assimilated. People come here, they've learned their language, we've been able to embrace the culture and be proud to be Americans. If you push people in here so fast, they don't have a chance to assimilate, then we have a fractured country, and that's what we have right now. Unfortunately, here in even Utah, we're going to see an uptick in crime because the law enforcement is being overwhelmed. You see an uptick in people possibly living on the streets at some point because we now have shelters that they have to move people out because they have other folks coming in. When you overwhelm a system, there's chaos. There's just no question about that. What Utah has done so well is we've planned, we budgeted, we keep order, we see the process so it makes sure that everybody's comfortable with it and we feel good about what the end result will be. Chaos is never good, and unfortunately the Democratic Party is leaving nothing but chaos in its wake, and we have to make sure that we can't keep this up. For sure.
The Biden-Harris administration would blame it on Republican members in Congress. They said there was a bill there that could have fixed some of these problems. Do you believe that the bill that was presented to Congress could have solved some of these problems and was worth discussing?
No. This is 3 years after we passed H.R. 2. H.R. 2 would have put back in place all the things that Biden had taken away with his executive order. This bill did nothing but codify the fact to have 1 point, whatever amount millions of people we have here, giving them the ability to stay, codifying catch and release, the fact they stopped catch and release. It would actually just made things worse. And by the way, it didn't even get out of the Senate. They didn't have one vote out of the Senate. So it was not going to work. If they really wanted to get it done, they could have had this conversation. Instead of saying the border is sealed years ago, it would have been dealing with it when we were going down there visiting. If they really wanted to deal with it, Kamala would have gone down to the border and visited, like most of us did, to want to know how to solve the issue. So no, it was a farce.
What's the fix in your mind? Because I think most Americans, when you talk to them, they're open to immigration. They're open to the idea of opening our arms to other countries. But I think a lot of people want to see some kind of way that people can do it legally and that it doesn't take years to do it. Is there a way that Congress can really sit down and talk about this? Because it seems like we talk about it every election cycle and then there's always another election, so no one wants to vote on it. Is there a way to truly sit down and solve this?
There is, if you have both sides wanting to solve the issue. The Democratic Party wants to bring people in to become citizens of the United States, and whether and just pass people through very, very quickly. The way we had done it before was we could have tweaked it and gotten better at it. But keep in mind, the people that came here before, they assimilated into our country. They love being Americans. We see it all across the board. When they raise their hand, they just can't wait to be part of this process. So again, chaos will never do it. We have to make sure now that the conversation, unfortunately, is how quickly can you have people become Americans. That's not where the conversation should be. Let's figure out, first of all, who's here, who should not be here. Let's take care of that. Let's seal the border. Let's get an order so that we know the people coming in, we can finally have a conversation about what does it take now to be part of our country, to be an American. Would you just want to come here for a few years and go back home, which many people want to do also? That's the conversation we'll have once we have things in order and in a process that we can depend on.
Another top concerns from voters is the economy. I don't know what people are telling you in your district right now, but I think people are still frustrated because prices are high. They're still concerned about where the stock market's going to go, where mortgage rates are going to go. Is there anything that Congress can be doing to fix this aside from passing budgets and making sure that the belt's tight in that regard?
It comes down to leadership. We have an administration right now that has no idea how the economy works. I think being a business owner, being an entrepreneur, that kind of helps somewhat to understand how to balance budgets. But when you come into a place where, first of all, you do a shut off the energy supply that we have, that is the bottom line to keeping things very cheap or lower prices. And when we become not only energy dependent but energy dominant, which we were planning on doing, then we have a different conversation. When you start passing bills where you're just printing money, like the Inflation Reduction Act quote, we predicted before that came out that the inflation was going to skyrocket. Unfortunately, inflation hurts mostly the middle class and those who really cannot afford it. The folks trying to get to the middle class, they're the ones that lose their hope first because they have no other options other than to go toward the government. So we have to, first of all, let's get somebody in place. That's why Donald Trump is such an important answer to us now. He understands how to run a business. He wants to make sure we get energy dependent again. He's bringing in innovators to figure out how we can cut down the costs of government. Think about Elon Musk being part of this process to see where can we cut waste. There's waste. I obviously want to make sure the government is doing its job right, but if there's waste, let's cut it. Let's put it in other places. Let's put some of them, I'm a big opponent of good education. Let's take some of the waste we have in D.C., Department of Education, and push that back into the states. Let the American people use and decide how they want to educate their kids in a way that we can do it best on the lower level.
President Trump talks about cutting some of the waste that's happening in our federal government, and I think that we can all see that that exists out there. But how do we trust that that's something that he's going to actually do? He's been president before. He obviously was dealing with a pandemic that nobody was planning on, but spending went up, and Republicans and Democrats both say, yes, let's get the spending under control, but it's easier said than done. It's been since, I believe, President Clinton was in the White House that we actually saw a balanced budget, and that's been a while.
The thing that I love about where we are today is where I see the American people. As tough as COVID was, we're kind of at a point where we're starting to talk together to each other again. And that's the real power of the American people, we the people. We're now talking about how we can make sure we're safe, that the prices come down. We're also going to have a America First legislative body. I believe we're going to have a trifecta. We'll get a bigger majority in the House, get the Senate, get President Trump, and all of a sudden we have not only a team in D.C. that believes in the American people, but we have the American people now aware, and they want to be part of this process. So they're going to demand not only the Republicans and the Democrats to come to the table and figure this out. And we have a leader who understands it because he's run a business before. He knows how to put good leaders around him again, and more importantly, he wants to put together innovators. We need to bring to D.C. innovation. We need to bring education, innovation across the board. So I'm excited about the fact that we have the right person leading our party. We have a team that's going to be backing them up, and the American people are now aware and be part of that conversation.
You spent some time with former President Trump and J.D. Vance. What are they saying that sounds different to you this time around than last go, that you believe they really can make that happen?
I would say the first thing is now we have an experienced President Trump. He was not a politician. He came in just like I did when I came in, just trying to figure things out. And so I think there are people that he brought in around him that took advantage of that. He was never able to really get a focus because he was attacked from all kind of different angles. He's going to come in this time. They're already planning. They're looking at how can they make sure to get the right cabinet. They have a connection with the Speaker Johnson that I'm very excited about too. There's a friendship. There's a trust. There's a harmony that they have that's going to allow us, even though we might not have a red wave, we'll have enough majority that because of that connection that our speaker has with our president, that the chaos will not happen. So I see us in a really very different, very unique position because of that combination. And it all comes out of, again, having such a tough time to COVID. But the blessing is now we're coming together as a people talking, and that's going to help us to get through a lot more in the future.
I think we all understand that money makes the world go round right now. We're seeing FEMA needing to up their spending with so many disasters we're dealing with in 6 states in the southeastern part of our country. We're also dealing with California with fires. Hawaii still trying to rebuild. And while that money is needed right now on the home front, a lot of people are seeing the money that we're sending to Ukraine and Israel and saying, when is enough enough, and is there enough accountability? As you're watching in Congress is what is happening and the spending that's happening, are there, I guess, methods in place to make sure that when we're sending that money overseas that it's being spent well and spent wisely?
No, there's not. I can't express this strong enough. We have nothing but chaos in our executive branch right now in the Democratic Biden administration. We're seeing at the border things that are going crazy, things that doesn't make any sense. We're seeing in everything else that we're doing, including the way we're spending money elsewhere. When it came down to Israel asking for money, we did something very simple as a body. We asked them for an end game, we asked them where it's going to go, and they got back to us all the information we needed. We asked the same thing for Ukraine, and Biden never got back to us. They never addressed it. We want to make sure that we're good stewards of the American money, American dollar, that we understand where things are going, that there is an end game, that we're not just there forever. And unfortunately, we don't have that kind of leadership with the Biden administration. I want to say this one thing, Heidi. Keep in mind, what you're seeing with President Biden is what we saw 4 years ago. I think the greatest fraud on our country is to have a leader that was not capable mentally, and no one in the inner circle would let us see that. The fact that he allowed this to happen for so many years, again, as my first 2 years, we could see from the information we're getting back that he was not really present. So that to me is a tragedy, and tragedy. But at the end of the day, it was something that should not have happened to American people. And we have to trust that we have a government that's going to do the best they can, that they're going to be innovative, and they're going to be on the spot when we need help. We're now seeing what's happening in North Carolina and Florida. They're very late to the party. We have to have somebody who's going to really nimble, innovative, and that's someone who's not been raised in the government like a President Trump.
I want to get back to the job of Congress, and I think if you were to boil it down, passing the budgets is probably the #1 job of congressional leaders. We saw the continuing resolution pass that kicks the can down the road to December 20th. So families at home, they're getting ready for the holidays, are going to have to be worrying if they're working for the federal government, if there's going to be another shutdown, if a budget's going to be passed. And this seems to be, instead of something that happens rarely, it's the norm now. How does this change, and how do we get out of that? Is there a realistic way? Because it just seems like we just expect there might be a shutdown, and some people might have to wait a while to get their paycheck, and it just seems like a yearly thing we do with political
Unfortunately,
drama.
it's muscle memory that we have these omnibus bills that have been going on for quite a while. And the good example is happening right now. We have actually passed, I think, about 8 of the 12 appropriations.
On the House side?
On the House side. The Senate hasn't done any. Because what the Senate does, they come to the very end and say that if you don't give us this omnibus, we're going to shut things down. I would say this, the worst thing we could do right now with Biden and administration is shut the government down, because this is a group that will use misery as a political strategy. They will find a way to make us hurt so much and then blame the Republican Party so they get more power. So that's why we made sure that we passed the continuing resolution. We did not want to shut the government down. President Trump finally came over, and we were having that conversation. He understood why we're doing it. And now the goal is we put the right team in place. We started looking at the mandatory spending. If we're not talking about Social Security, Medicare, and what's the other one? Anyway,
and they're non-negotiables. We're talking about
those are
people's,
mandatory.
Yes, okay.
Those are things that come in all the time. If we're not talking about that, we're not really talking about bringing down the debt. So let's have a serious conversation about Social Security. Make sure that those who have paid in, make sure they're taken care of. But give those young people, our grandkids and kids, a chance to have other options. Let's be innovative, like we do with everything else. They will probably come out having much better in retirement than we could ever think of if we allow the free market, the innovative, to come into the process. So we have to get to that point, but to get there, we need to have the House, the Senate, and President Trump, because if we don't, then we're going to have fear-mongering. The minute we start talking about it, the Democrats will tell us we're going to try to blow everything up, when that's the case.
Behind the scenes, do you see the will to get something done on that? Because we're hearing from the Congressional Budget Office in the next 9 to 10 years that Social Security won't be solvent. And when we get to an election, Harris says, well, Trump says he wants to cut your Social Security, and Trump says something about Harris. And the idea is scare tactics, because there's a lot of people who depend on that, and they don't want anyone who's discussing changing it. But something has to change, or their checks are going to be cut by at least 25%. Does that mean raising the age, more taxes on it? What is going to be the change?
Well, first of all, that's
solvent?
why it's going to be so important to get the House, the Senate, and President Trump. You just nailed it. The minute we start talking about bringing innovation, the first thing that the Democrats do is they use scare tactics. We're not talking about cutting out anybody from Social Security. We're not talking about raising the age. We're talking about bringing innovation. How about creating more of a revenue coming through our country through gas and energy, those types of things? How about taking away the rules that keeps business owners from thriving, so we have more tax money coming into? There's so many ways that we can raise revenue to begin to lower the debt. And in doing that is how we take care of those who have already invested into the Social Security. The most important thing is we have so many. For those who have not seen the rocket that Elon Musk the booster they just put back.
That was crazy cool on Sunday, yeah.
Think about, that's innovation. What if we brought that same kind of innovation to Social Security, to education? We're able to do it if we just think outside the box, let the innovators come to the table and tell us what it looks like. The things we can do today would be remarkable, and we'll be celebrating how well our generations in the future will retire if we just allow us to innovate at this point. If
voters would like to discuss some of these issues with you, meet up with you, do you have any town halls or ways that they can get in contact?
Yes, we do. Just call my office. It's Burgess for Utah. That's one place you can catch up with us. We have a remarkable team here. We do town halls. Actually, we do. We actually have in the different places across our country, across the district, we have meetings where we just kind of show what's going on and talk to the constituents. But yeah, Burgess for Utah will be a good place to get started. We would love to take your calls, and we have our team will get back and answer those questions for you for sure.
Very good. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Heidi. I appreciate it. Absolutely. Thanks so much.